Now, the second one that we're going to bring you to is going to be in the world of intermittent fasting. Now, I hear that Andy Lau practices the 16-8, which means to say he doesn't eat for 16 hours, he only eats for 8 hours. So, intermittent fasting, how is it supposed to help us be a better person? How does it help us lose weight, have a clearer mind? So, today, folks, we're very proud to bring you our senior dietitian from Gleneagles Hospital, Miss Hui Mei, to share with us more.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, thanks for tuning in. My name is Hui Mei. I'm the dietitian in Gleneagles Hospital. So today, I'll be sharing some tips on intermittent fasting, how to do it more effectively, and also what are the evidence out there. Okay, so before I go into my sharing, so firstly, I would like to have a poll question. Okay, so would like to check as in like how many of you there actually in practicing on intermittent fasting, and if you do, which method that you all try? Okay, so the first one is actually 5-2 diet, which is like 2 days cutting down your caloric intake, and then the 5 days is eating as usual. Time restricted eating, as what James shared just now, Andy Lau, 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating, or 10 hours of 16 hours of another method is actually 14 hours of fasting and then 10 hours of eating. C, complete alternate day fasting, is like 2 days or 3 days a week that you don't eat at all, very limited calorie intake, and the rest of the days will eat as usual. Or you have not tried any intermittent fasting before. Okay, so you can actually put in your question, your answer, and I will share the result in the short while. Okay. All right. So the result is out. Yes. Okay. So based on the result is that right, majority actually have not tried intermittent fasting before. Yeah. So for those that who have tried, yes, I mean that you're actually like Andy Lau also. So time restricted eating is actually the most famous among the intermittent fasting. Okay. So let's see whether is that actually the situation out there. Okay. Later on, I will share in my slide. Okay, so today what I'll be sharing is actually talking about dietary approach for weight loss and what is this intermittent fasting, how to do it effectively, and of course, I mean that I will actually share about behavioral modification. Okay, so before we go into the topic, let's look at the prevalence of obesity and overweight in Singapore. So you can see this is actually a national health survey done for few many every 3 years once. So if let's say we can focus on the 2020 result, the latest result, we notice is that right, this obesity and overweight become a growing problems. If you were to look into it, the green color line, so it basically tells us it's like 1 in 11 Singaporean is actually having this obesity issue. And for overweight, you can see it's like 3 in 10 are having overweight issue. Yeah, so it's actually every year has been increasing. Yeah, so after looking into the graph, the chart, we know that the prevalence is high. So we need to see what are the which dietary approach is the best evidence to help for weight loss. Okay, so first of all, what we need to understand is that when does this weight loss occur? So we have to back to the basic caloric balance concept. Okay, so if let's say your intake basically is like what we eat. Okay, the food that we put into our stomach and to our body, this is actually caloric intake. So for caloric output is actually the physical activity that we do, the basic metabolic rate, and also the energy that we use for digestion and all that. So if let's say your intake is equal to your output, basically you are going to maintain your weight. So in order to create for weight loss, right, what we need to do is actually we need to create energy deficit, which is intake less than output. Okay, so based on the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in America, so we can see this is actually the evidence, and it's a strong evidence to say that individualized diet should be prescribed for those who want to bring down their weight. So including patients' preference and health status to achieve and maintain nutrient adequacy and reduce calorie intake based on the following reduction strategies. So you can see that for female, so it's actually we keep about 1,002 to 1,005 caloric a day. For male, we keep about 1,005 to 1,008 caloric per day. Or we, as in like from dietitian, we will assess your total calorie intake, how much that you're eating, and we deduct 500 to 750 caloric per day. Or another method we can use is that one of the evidence-based diet that restricts certain food types in order to create energy deficits. So this one I will share later. So looking into that, right, you can see that what we are this a few strategies, right, are more we call as continuous energy restriction. So this is actually what we always been practicing. Yes, and also it's actually the main form of restriction via dietary means. So for this continuous energy restriction is like a daily basis, right? So and we can see that the result is effective. For those that who are doing it, the weight loss is actually quite significant. But there are a lot of that, but a lot of people actually think that it is too rigid. Yeah, because you every day have to restrict yourself to a certain amount of calorie. That's why that people find it difficult to maintain. Hence, this intermittent fasting actually comes in. Yeah, so has gained popularity in the last decade. And I mean that is also research do support that intermittent fasting achieve weight loss. But something to take note is that, right, it doesn't provide superior management in comparison with the continuous energy restriction. Okay, so now we go into this intermittent fasting, right? What is it and how many types of that? So if you were to look into that, right, there are actually in total, there are many types of intermittent fasting. So we have a complete alternate day fasting as what I shared just now. It's like they are the fasting days is basically no energy containing foods and beverages consumed, and another then you actually a few days it will be eating days whereby you eat as usual what you normally take. Okay, so for the second type is modified fasting regimens. So this is actually the 5-2 diet that I shared just now. So on the 2 days of fasting, so you'll be consuming 20 to 25% of energy needs. Of your requirement. So the rest of the 5 days, you will actually eat as usual as like based on your requirement. Okay, so there's actually the another third type is actually the time restricted feeding. So these protocols allows people to consume like the energy within a few hours as what we shared just now. It can be actually 8 hours or it can be 10 hours. Okay, so the rest of the fasting, right, is more to like a religious fasting. So there are many types of that. Okay, so among these three, let's look at this complete fasting, modified fasting, and time restricted fasting. Okay, so which one is actually the most common one? Yes. Which one is the most common one? Okay, just a second. Yes, you're right. Time restricted eating is actually the most people doing it. The reason is because you already fast while you sleep, right? Yeah, so that's why there's actually don't have to take extra effort on like you don't have to eat the whole day or what. And it can be repeated as often as a person like, and even done once or twice a week. Yeah, so it based on personal preference. Okay, so let's look into the comparison between this intermittent fasting and um, yeah. So intermittent fasting and continuous energy restriction, right? So based on the evidence out there. Okay, so intermittent fasting, right, is actually support for short-term weight loss. Yeah, so because there are still lack of evidence or research to look into the long-term outcome. Whereas for continuous energy restriction, you can actually know that once you do it and you do it for sustainable for a long time, you will see the weight loss. Okay, and for intermittent fasting, there are studies actually show improvement in disease indicators like insulin resistance, blood pressure, but the study is actually again is actually quite short term. Yeah. So, but whereas for continuous energy restriction, right, we can see the improvement in the disease indicators. But one thing to highlight about this intermittent fasting is that, right, it is not for everyone. Yeah, especially for those that who having type 1 diabetes, for example, or maybe those on diabetes that on oral glucose lowering agent or insulin injection, because you have to eat according to your insulin injection timing. So you cannot be actually like saying you take the medication or you inject and you don't eat. That will be actually impose a very high risk on hypoglycemia. Yeah. Okay. So we have to actually take note that there are certain side effects also when you're actually practicing on intermittent fasting. Like for example, hunger, because on the time that you're not eating, you experience this, fatigue, insomnia, headache, and importantly, and one thing that we always been hearing is actually the irritable, because it's like you when you're hungry, it's a hanger, right? So hungry plus angry. Yeah. So then this is actually it will reduce the ability to concentrate. Now, of course, for continuous energy restriction, there are certain side effects as well, like for example, hunger, because you continuously control your calorie intake. So let's do a comparison between safety concern. So for intermittent fasting, we're not sure whether how is it going to be for long-term use because we don't have the result yet. Yeah, but for continuous energy restriction, the safety concern is that if you prolong intake lower than 1002 caloric, that it will somehow affect a bit of the metabolism of the body. So that's why that we actually need to monitor closely in terms of like how you do it for your diet control. Okay, so how to do it effectively? That's actually important to know, right? So what is actually shown in the slide here? So this is actually a table to summarize the types of diet intervention that is considered effective and supportive for weight loss. So the first column, this is actually based on a good study and it's actually a high level study to show that these few method, the and diet control will help for weight loss as what I actually shown here. So as what y'all can see is actually decreasing sugar, the beverages intake, portion control, low caloric diet, or you're practicing on meal replacement, low carb diet, high protein with energy restriction diet, or dash diet with energy restriction, or Mediterranean diet. Yeah. So you can see from these few boxes, right? What are the similarities? So you can see that the similarities is that, right, they're all talking about caloric intake. Yeah, so ultimately, total caloric intake matters. Okay, so if you look into the second last column, right, on the table, so timing of eating, right, is actually it is actually part of the lacking investigation. So it doesn't mean it is not effective, but it's just that it is lacking of investigation. Okay, so we'd like to see if let's say this is your usual intake, right? So if your usual intake, like for example, breakfast, you have like a set of bread toast, toast bread with coffee and two soft-boiled egg, and then lunchtime you actually have char kway teow, for example, and then you have bubble tea with let's say 50% sugar. Okay, so then dinner, so you have like a chap chai peng with curry sauce, curry gravy with chicken, vegetables, tofu. Yeah, and before you sleep, then you go and have your maybe some dessert when you watch TV because it's like after a long day of sitting, right? So it's like going to visit the fridge and take some cookies and all that. So if this one and you're practicing on intermittent fasting, let's say, and you squeeze everything into that 8 hours time, do you think that you will see some weight loss? Yeah, you probably won't see because your total caloric intake, right, will be actually still the same if you were to compare like if let's you doing like a daily, you don't restrict your timing of eating. Okay, let's see another example. If this is your usual diet and you change your diet to 8 hours, so of course the last eating, which is the cookies or dessert, right, it doesn't fit into that 8 hours anymore. So will you see weight loss? Yeah, Bob, you will actually see, but it is still not significant. The reason is because, right, the caloric intake overall is actually still high, and the food choices, right, are mainly still high in fat and sugar because of the bubble tea, you can see. Okay, so give example C. So this is actually your usual diet, right? And you change your choices. So you restrict your your eating to 8 hours, but you make changes to your diet. For example, breakfast you keep as your toast bread. Then lunchtime, instead of the char kway teow, you change to something noodle soup. From here, just the change of these choices, but you still finish full share, right? You'll be able to cut down your calorie intake to almost about 300 calories just by these changes. Okay, and then change your bubble tea, which 50% sugar, about 200 plus caloric, to 60 calories orange. So from here, you manage to cut down another 100 plus calories already. And dinner, instead of like the rice with a lot of gravies and the fried stuff, right, you change to brown rice, or you change to white rice also can. But then you have full share of you have vegetables, you have meat or chicken, but they are mostly non-fried item, and you can still pair with a fruit. The calories will be still lower than the plate of the rice that's shown on the left side. So this one, right, you can say that you restrict the timing, at the same time you control your caloric. This will definitely help for bringing down the weight. Okay, so the recommendations for practice at the moment. So for in practice for intermittent fasting is that, right? We can see a short time frames, a short time a result will definitely be very sure, but we are still unclear whether how in long term how sustainability it is. Okay, and at the moment we still lack of scientific evidence regarding an ideal plan for intermittent fasting, such as the number of weekly fasting days, whether 2 days is better or 3 days is better, duration of each fasting, these 10 hours or 14 hours, right? Not so sure. We still lack of the evidence. Extent of caloric restrictions and how you eat on the non-fasting days. So we still need more in result on this. Okay, so if you want to practice on intermittent fasting, that's absolutely okay, but you have to make sure that you have to get enough nutrition, you have to get enough hydration and fiber, and also in terms of like hunger wise, right, you need to learn how to cope with hunger. So this one actually bring me to another topic of mine, which is actually behavior modification. So this three components, right? So it's actually not very not familiar, but this is actually the important three components when we talk about weight loss journey. So diet that I mentioned just now, exercise just now, Miss Candice has already mentioned. So it helps for actually I mean when you actually stand up, right? Don't go to the fridge and then take food, right? So rightfully is actually the best is actually do some exercise at the time to actually increase your energy burning. And lastly, the behavioral education is also very important. So as what I mentioned, you need to deal with it, deal with the hunger. So how can we do it? Okay, so importantly, so when you actually go for the diet control, these are the few things that must make sure. Enjoy your meals, eat slowly. So we recommend is actually about 15 to 20 minutes of eating for each meal. That is actually helping you to understand the fullness so that you will not overeat. And importantly, avoid distractions. Don't watch Netflix, don't watch YouTube when you eat, because when you watch TV or when you watch movie when you eat, right, which one that you all will be focusing on? Of course will be actually the movie, right? So then in this case, right, you won't be able to understand how full you are, so you will just continue to eat and eat until you finish the whole packet, and after finish the movie and say, oh, I finished the whole packet, I've eaten 500 caloric already. So then in this case, right, it really at risk of putting on weight. And one more important thing to note is that, right, don't shop, avoid shopping on the empty stomach. Don't go and shop on the fasting hours lah, on the all the fasting day, because right, when you see everything also very nice, right, so you will just take some and take everything, so in the end, right, the cart will be full of food already, that it will be a bit risky. So put a list down, or shop on the day that you really have a full meal. Okay, so these are actually important point, is that right? Because when we see patient or we see client in the clinic, right? So 50% or more than 50% of them will just tell me that, oh, they comply with the diet control. They already tried various ways to control their calorie, but it's just that they don't see the result. So they start to report to me what they eat every day, and it looks fine, everything looks fine. Then suddenly they'll just mention that, oh, I eat when I'm stressed, or I eat when I'm bored, okay, or I eat when I'm working. Yeah, so it's like when you have a lot of meeting, you're just like snack and snack. So then in this case, this is what we call as the mental hunger, you see. So it's like a emotional eating. Yeah, so we have to highlight this to them, as in like, because this is one of the behavior that people may not aware of it. Or another example, when I have had enough, the day I just dug into a cafe, sat down and ordered a cheesecake and wolf it down between my errand. Yeah, so you can see that they actually like report all the thing nicely, right? But they may not be aware that these are things that additional they are doing. Yeah. Another example, I can't exercise until I get to 75 kg, or else my back and knees will hurt. But I want to lose weight now without exercising now, so I can go back to the gym. What do y'all think about this statement? Yeah, so it is actually that is unrealistic, right? So we need to actually tell them, highlight to them that these are the few things that you all need to take note, makes subconsciously or unconsciously, that they are doing it. Okay, so the conclusion of this of mine for regarding this intermittent fasting is that, does it work? I would say is that, right. A lot of people also claim that diets don't work, but in fact, all diet work. The predictive factor of success is how long and how well you stick on it. So sustainability is actually the key of when we talk about weight loss journey. Okay. All right, so here comes to an at the end of my talk. My talk. So you all can actually look for, if let's say you're interested, can look for our dietetic services in IHH hospitals, but we also available in Gleneagles Hospital as well. So if you are interested, you can call to the number that is stated in the slide, or email us. So for our corporate clients, partners, you can quote, I wanna be lean, when you book your first consultation with us. Yeah. So, but if let's say you all don't have any medical history, medical background, so self-referral is accepted. But if you do have other medical problems like high cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, right, a doctor's referral is required. Okay. So, thank you.